Are you seeking fulfillment for your life? Do you want freedom from fear? That's why we're here. Welcome to Jesus 101, introducing you to the real Jesus. And now, here's your host, Elizabeth Talbot.
Welcome to Jesus 101. Thank you so much for joining us. We're starting a brand new series on the book of Exodus. We have called it the Exodus Journey. And what we want to actually concentrate on is how can we trust God when we don't understand His will? You know, the people of Israel in the Exodus, well, they didn't understand all the answers that God had for their problems. You know, they were saying, what are we going to eat? And God said, well, I'll just rain bread from heaven. Or what are we going to drink? Well, He said, hit that rock and water will come out. See, God doesn't always make sense to us. So how can we trust Him in this Exodus journey of ours? Because we're all going to the promised land too, and we need to learn the same lessons that Israel had to learn. Today, to start the series, I want to show you a picture. This is a picture that is very, very dear to me. It's Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Well, I think I don't have a big problem with the first part, trust in the Lord with all your heart. But I do have a big problem with the second part, lean not on your own understanding. I am, the kind of person that wants to research. I want to have answers. And God says, don't depend on your own understanding. And the reason why this picture is so dear to me is because my dad, after having chemo, some complications, he had to go to another place for a little while before he could come back home. And in that room, I placed this picture, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. He passed away a few days after that. So how can we trust God when we don't understand His will? What about His purpose? What He wants to do? What if we don't have the answers? How do we trust Him? That's what we're going to be discussing. And thank you so much for being with us. I am so excited to start this brand new series on the Exodus. And to help us in this series, we have a very, very special guest. And that is Pastor Ty Gibson. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So excited that you are with us.
I'm excited too.
I've been waiting for a while to have you on the set. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's going to be enjoyable.
Yeah. It's a woohoo series. You'll see. It's a fantastic series.
Right. I believe it. I love the book of Exodus.
And I'm so happy that you are with us. And what do you think about this trusting God when we don't understand His will?
Well, Elizabeth, my experience as an individual has been that oftentimes our comprehension has to have a lag time to catch up with what God is doing.
Yeah.
But what I've discovered is that once my understanding does catch up, there are rational ways in which God works. And so God is never capricious. He's never overriding goodness or justice.
Absolutely.
He's always working things out that we may not understand.
But He sees things that we don't see.
He sees what we don't understand.
So sometimes even when time goes by, we might not understand His will. So at some point, we got to surrender our anxiety and say, okay, I'm going to just trust this God, even though...
So trust has to supersede understanding sometimes.
Yes, most of the time for me.
When there's a line from a poem or a song or something that just came to me, that when we can't trace His hand, we can trust His heart.
Yes.
So
I
God's
know the song.
character,
I love it.
God's character is good, even when we don't understand what He's doing.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive right into the book of Exodus.
All right.
From the very first chapter, we find out that, remember the story of Joseph and all of them in Genesis? Yeah. Well, now the people of Israel are in Egypt. It says that they had been 70 when they arrived. This is Exodus 1, verse 5. All the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70. Now, they're fruitful. They have increased greatly. You want to read verse 7 for us? This is Exodus 1, verse 7.
But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them.
Yeah, so this is the covenant of Genesis 12:2, that God had told Abraham that he would have a big family. And now it's
It's growing.
Yeah, it's growing, and they have filled the earth.
But the story is building on the narrative of their growth and saying, hey, wait a minute, because the presiding superpower of the time, Egypt,
Yes.
is threatened by their growth.
Exactly, and that's I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a verse here that says on verse 8 that new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the word know is from the Hebrew yada, that knowing that is intimate, that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
sometimes used of a husband and wife, is very, very acquainted with.
Right,
and the
right.
previous Pharaoh was acquainted with Joseph and all that he had done for Egypt.
Yeah, yeah.
But this new Pharaoh wasn't.
No,
Yeah.
and it says in verse 9 that they were more and mightier than the Egyptians
Yeah, yeah,
eventually.
yeah, yeah.
And so verse 10 tells us that the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, decided, we're going to have to deal with these people in
Yeah,
order to
do
keep them
something.
down.
Absolutely.
So there are power dynamics here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and the power
absolutely.
dynamics are such that the king of Egypt feels threatened by this people and needs to put in place some kind of mechanisms to keep them down. And those mechanisms pan out into oppression.
Yeah, and we're going to discuss them because we have three plans. He has plan A, plan B, and plan C, Pharaoh. So we start the Exodus with this covenant reminder that God has reminded Abraham, has told Abraham that his people will be many. And after 400 and plus years,
Right.
they will be, liberated. But we start Exodus with a reminder that these are the people of Jacob. These are the
Yeah,
people
yeah.
of Israel.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are holding this covenant.
Right.
Right? So how is God going to fulfill his purpose if this Pharaoh wants to destroy them?
Well, he's going to have to navigate.
Yeah,
he's going
yeah.
to have to navigate the
Yeah.
opposing free will
Exactly.
of this presiding superpower,
Yeah.
Egypt, and the king of Egypt.
Yes.
So God has to be himself. Even though God is omnipotent, God has to be resourceful because he's dealing
Yes.
with human beings who have free will. So
Yeah.
even a human being
That's
can throw God a curveball, and
Yes.
the king of Egypt is throwing God a curveball.
Yes, and even though we cannot fully frustrate God's plans, we can definitely delay them. And what's going to happen here is that let's go to the plan A, plan B, plan C.
Okay.
So plan A for Pharaoh is simply to make their life bitter with labor, right? So if you want to read verses 13 and 14, we're still in Exodus 1,
Okay.
verses 13 and 14.
So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. That's pretty strong language.
Yeah.
And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they were made to serve was with rigor. With
Yeah, so
rigor.
you have this word more than once, rigor, oppression,
Yeah,
and that's the plan A. We're going to exterminate them, subdue them, because we're going to give them hard labor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work because the next verses say they continue to multiply.
Yeah.
So then he has plan B. He
Okay.
talks to the midwives.
All right.
What was the plan? Do you remember?
The plan with the midwives for the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, was to have all the male children killed immediately at birth in order to take down the
Exactly.
population and the power.
But it says that the midwives actually fear God, says verse 17, and they did not do as the king said.
No.
And so then the Pharaoh had a plan C. So he's still trying to do something. So plan C is at the very end, verse 22.
Okay, so Pharaoh commanded all the people, saying, every son who is born, you shall cast into the river. Yeah, so this gets really interesting, doesn't it? This is plan C, you're saying?
Yes, because the first plan is labor.
Yeah.
Second plan is midwives.
Right.
And because they don't do, then he talks to all his people. Now,
Yeah.
not just the midwives,
Yeah.
everybody. You got to throw every kid of the Israelites that is a male baby, you got to throw them in
Save
the Nile.
the girls, but
Yes.
yeah.
And here we are wondering, how is God going to fulfill his purpose with this authoritative king, authoritarian king, right?
You know, I really think that the book of Exodus is a timeless story that applies perennially down through history over and over and over again, because really what we have here is, as I mentioned earlier, power dynamics, right?
Yes,
so
yeah.
you have the powerful and the rich oppressing
Yes.
the poor and the vulnerable.
Yes.
But God is so resourceful.
Yeah.
God is so resourceful that
Yes.
he's going to plant an insider who shares his value system in the kingdom.
That's
so
right.
even the third plan that Pharaoh has is
it's not-
thwarted.
Yeah. And we're getting ahead of ourselves because now we're talking about this one person that Ty just mentioned. And before we go into Moses' life and birth and life, we're going to stop for a moment and we're going to watch this video that the kids have done telling us who Moses is for them.
Moses was
A man chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt.
he was a prophet of Jesus. He was the prince of Egypt.
A guy who saved people from slavery.
He was someone who served God. Well, first, the Pharaoh wanted to kill all the babies.
I think baby boys.
So his mom put him in the basket.
The princess found him and she wanted to keep him.
And then she took him in. Then he would become the prince. So then that means the prince could stay in the palace. God told him to tell the Pharaoh that he wanted the Israelites to be free. He wanted to let them go because he wanted slaves to work for him.
After all the plagues happened, he told him to let my people go, and Pharaoh let him go.
And then the king was chasing them. And then Moses prayed to God so he could make a miracle. Then God closes the ocean and all of them died.
I don't know, something good inside you.
Faith means that you trust in God, I think.
You rely on God and you trust him with all your heart and you believe in him.
They both lead their people. They both save people. Like Moses, he saved people from the Egyptians, and Jesus saved people from sin. So they both saved people.
Kids are always so honest.
They are.
And they have all these opinions. And in this case, who is Moses, the deliverer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what you said before, how the Pharaoh wanted to use his power, right? But this woman, Moses' mother, actually will obey the edict to put the baby in the Nile. It's just that she's going to put him in a basket, but he's going to throw it in the river, but not just throw it, right? Because there's a purpose behind this, right?
It could be that she is aware of her surroundings and she knows there's a possibility that he'll be rescued by somebody who is an insider who could preserve his life.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about this. Chapter 2 of Exodus, verse 1, it shows that he was a Levite, meaning that he was from the tribe of Levi, both his father and his mother from Levi. And so this woman hides this baby. I have a baby here. And
or something like a baby.
It is a baby. It's a doll. She keeps him for 3 months hiding, it says. If you want to read the story.
That's an achievement.
That's, you have kids, right?
I do. You can't hide them.
How many kids do you have?
3.
3?
Yeah.
And are they little?
No, they're not little.
Because you're not that young?
I'm not that young, so they're not little anymore.
So they're adults and
Yes,
you have
that's
grandchildren too?
2 grandchildren.
Wow,
Yeah.
fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So 3 months she keeps him, but then she cannot hide him anymore. And why don't you tell us what happened on verse 3 of chapter 2 now of Exodus?
But when they could no longer hide him, she took an ark, a little, like what you have here.
Yes.
She took an ark, and an ark of bulrushes, some kind of natural material, and she dabbed it with asphalt and pitch, and she put the child in it, and she
put the child in the Nile. It says that she put him in the river that supposedly all the children were supposed to end up in.
Yeah, along the riverbanks there.
And
that was scary for a mom.
Imagine, what does it take for us to surrender our loved ones to God? You know, she had
It's
to say,
overwhelming.
I've done everything I could. Now I'm putting this baby in this basket. God, you do your thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe you have to let go of something in a relative today, and you have to give that relative to God. Maybe
Yeah.
you're not putting the relative in a basket, but you're having to surrender the relative. Isn't it?
Yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah, sometimes
Especially
people,
with children.
yeah, and
especially
sometimes
with
sp-
teenagers.
and sometimes with spouses too.
Yeah.
Maybe they got sick, they're older,
yeah.
they have a disease, and you don't know what to do, and you're saying, "Okay, God, please take care of them." You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
or your parents when they age, or your teenagers when
Right,
they have
right.
to start driving.
Right. When she's putting her baby in the basket and into the river, there's a risk factor. She knows that he could be dead any minute.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But she's hoping and praying, no doubt, and trusting that some kind of
Something's gonna
providential,
happen.
yeah, something's
Absolutely.
gonna unfold.
And it does happen. The princess goes and she opens this little ark,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very interesting because we start getting the difference between Egyptians and Hebrews immediately on verse 6. She says, this is one of the Hebrews' children.
Right.
She already knows that there's two groups, the Hebrews
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
the Egyptians. And this is not an Egyptian.
Yeah.
It's a Hebrew baby, right? And Moses' sister, so fast. What does she come up with?
She's ingenious. How old do you think she is? We don't know.
Well, she is a little bit older because we have some indication later on in the wilderness that she's
Yeah.
older than
Yeah.
Moses. But
Yeah, but she's thinking on her feet because
spot.
immediately, yeah, she's bringing the baby to the Pharaoh's daughter, and with really an ingenious plan.
yeah.
Yeah.
She comes and says, can I bring you one of the Hebrew women, in verse 7, that she may nurse the child?
Yeah, one of them.
One of them, let me go look
Like
to
in
see which one.
in her mind, my mom.
Yeah, that's
His
right.
mom.
And the mom comes.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because we end up here on verse 9 where the princess is going to pay the mom wages.
Now that's a deal.
Yeah, and she doesn't
Providence
have
is
to hide.
working out, yeah.
She doesn't have to hide the baby
Right,
anymore,
yeah,
and
yeah.
she's going to get paid to raise it.
Her own child.
You said a moment ago, God is resourceful.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely was so resourceful here. And well, we don't know anything about Moses for a while. And by the way, the name Moses in Egyptian meant be born.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the pharaohs had the name Moses in them, like Tutmos and Amos and Ramses. They all have Mos in it. So Moses was already predestined to be to be a king, to be a pharaoh. But in Hebrew, they did a play of words that means to draw out of the water. So that's how we ended up
out of the womb, out of the water.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't know much about Moses until we find him in trouble in a moment. So between verse 10 and 11, we know that 40 years went by. And the only reason why we know that is because in Acts chapter 7, in Stephen's sermon, it says that 40 years went by, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us what happened to Moses 40 years later?
Well, I think this is really, really interesting in the narrative because what the storyteller wants us to understand is that God has been very strategic here because Moses is an individual who, as the story unfolds, is possessed with a very high sense of justice. And this is going to be necessary for the mission that God is going to call him to. This can't be just any individual, Elizabeth. This needs to be somebody with a high sense of justice. And from verse 11 onward to like verse 13, it's very clear that when he sees oppression occurring, he wants to intervene.
Yes, and he will do that. It is very interesting. Talking about justice, I need to make a parenthesis. Sorry. Did you notice the contribution of women in the liberation of Moses in this chapter?
The women are the heroes.
They are all the heroes.
Yes.
I mean, it's very interesting because first we have, obviously, the sister of Moses, then we have the mother of Moses that preserved him for 3 months. Then we have the princess who rescued.
Right.
We have the midwives who didn't kill the babies. I mean, women after women.
There's a lot of feminine IQ and EQ.
Yeah, there you
in
go.
The text.
Well, I had to say that when you said justice. But let's go back to the other justice. He sees the Hebrews being oppressed, and he already sees them as his brethren. Why don't you read verse 11 for us?
Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so he's already recognizing that
Yeah,
these are his people.
yeah.
This is a brethren of his that is being oppressed, like you were saying, the sense
Yeah.
of justice, right?
Well, he was raised by his actual mother, who must have been educating him. You know
That's
what I
right,
mean?
that's right, that's
Yeah.
right, that's right. And so he goes and kills the Egyptian that is hitting this other Hebrew. I want to ask you something. Can you grab this?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to fulfill God's purpose with your own muscles?
I have.
Like-
In fact, I'm addicted to doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, God has already asked me to be a deliverer, but you
Right.
know, I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. You know what
Yeah.
they call in 12-step programs, white knuckling?
You're right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do this.
Yeah.
When in fact, he is trying to liberate the people of Israel with no clue about what God is going to be doing.
Right.
He just knows, he has a sense
Yeah,
of
yeah.
justice, and he's going to do it because he's going to
Yeah.
be strong enough to do it.
Yeah. So it raises the question in the text, was it right or wrong what he did? And I think that what we witness here, of course, is an act of vigilante justice on his part.
Yeah.
He kills the Egyptian. It's an act of justice, but it's also an act of murder because he's intervening in a way that is contrary to God's ultimate character and plan. And I think, Elizabeth, that one part of the larger biblical narrative is that retaliatory violence is being worked out of human systems.
Wow. That's very deep.
Yeah, I mean, he's retaliating in the moment with passion, right?
Yeah, right.
So he intervenes and he commits an act of, justice on one level, but on another level, it's not productive of ultimate good, is
And
it?
what was he going to do? Kill every Egyptian that was oppressing the Israel? See, I relate a lot with Moses because when God gives me a job, I want to do it.
Right.
And I'm gonna have the whole cart, and I'm gonna pull it.
Right.
And one of the things that we learn from all these biblical bios, Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, Moses, David, is that they all had to learn the same lesson, that it wasn't going to be human strength or human wisdom that was going to
Right.
accomplish
Right.
the purposes of God.
Right.
That at some point you have to say, okay, God, this is too big for me, but you have power. I don't have power. I'm going to switch from anxiety to trust. I'm going to switch from trying to do it on my own to being assured that you're in charge.
But isn't it fabulous that even in our weakness, when we want to run ahead and vigilante justice, when we want to do something,
God is still...
that God is, he doesn't abandon us. He doesn't walk away. He's like, okay, let's recapitulate now. Let's recalibrate.
As a matter of fact, when he killed the Egyptian, as you know, the next day, there were two Hebrews fighting, and he tried to help them, and one of them said, who are you? Why are you acting like this? Are you going to kill me the way you killed the Egyptian?
Yeah.
And he had to run away, right?
Well, that shows also in the story that retaliatory violence causes us to lose credibility, not gain credibility.
Wow.
Even
Hi, you came with a profound thoughts
yeah,
today.
even with those who are on our side.
Yeah.
Violence, according to the New Testament, those who kill with the sword will be killed with the sword. So anything contrary to the character of God produces bad fruit.
Wow, that's
and so
interesting.
there's not trust here, even with
even when, and he has to flee. He has to flee, and he goes to Midian. It's interesting because before I was studying this, I didn't realize that Midian was a son of Abraham. So he goes to this town, Midian, where they also worship the God of Abraham.
Right.
Because for those of you that are interested in knowing, Genesis 25:2 mentions Midian as a son of Abraham. So he goes to this town and he marries the daughter of this man that has him in his house, and he names his first child Gerson, right?
Okay.
And Ger means cast out. And he says, because I was a stranger in the land. But he's not a stranger now. He is back to belonging. He was a stranger in Egypt.
Yeah.
He realizes that he has come back to his roots. But God needed 40 years for Moses to unlearn some things.
And learn or just unlearn?
Unlearn.
And learn, though, I'm saying.
Yeah, unlearn and learn.
Yeah. So, I mean...
All right, it wasn't my accent. He meant to say that. It was Unlearn and learn.
Yes, but all of us do, right? I mean, if we're going to be most effective in whatever it is that we're called to do,
Yes.
there's information in our heads that needs to go out. I mean, there's a kind
Yeah.
of personal exodus that needs to occur.
Well, that's why we are discussing this, because all of us are on our way to heaven. We want to live this journey with assurance and not with fear, but we all are having to unlearn a few things because many of us are fearful in this journey, and we want to come to a place of trust.
And some of what we need to learn and unlearn is a fine-tuning of our motives, because the motive of Moses was at the base level justice, but how he enacted it was a problem. So there's something in him that needs to be retained. And there's something in him that needs to be modified, right? Yeah, something needs to go.
And we're going to see in a moment, because he's going to have a revelation, not in a moment, in our next program, we're going to have God reveals his name as the covenantal assurance that the purposes will be fulfilled. You know, each program, we're trying to have a lesson that we keep. The lesson for this first program is God's purpose will be fulfilled in his time and in his way.
And sometimes it takes time.
Yes, it takes
more time than we want.
And if we could just wait, be in between, but be assured instead of being anxious, we would have learned a very important lesson in this Exodus journey of ours, right? And so the lesson, again, God's purpose is fulfilled in his way and in his time. So what happened to God's purpose? Well, it's still going. It's just that in a different way than we were expecting. And do you want to say anything else before I head to the cross?
Ultimately, the justice that's pulsating in the heart of Moses is a sense of justice that comes from the covenant-keeping God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Absolutely.
So there's a sense in which he is in tune with the heart of God.
Yes.
With that sense of justice.
Yes, but it needs to be molded a bit.
It needs to be molded. He needs to be a disciple himself, and he needs to come under the character of God in ways that maybe he's not aware of.
And maybe that's why he will have to spend 40 years with sheep.
Maybe?
Yeah.
We could take out the word maybe. That is why.
And so next program, we will find him after 40 years of unlearning some things. Thanks, Ty, for being with us.
Yes.
I'm going to head to the cross. As you probably know, Moses is a symbol of Christ in the Bible, because Christ would be the ultimate deliverer, right? And Jesus would be the new and greater Moses that takes us to the promised land. And this is the way he did it. He humbled himself all the way to dying for his children. Don't forget that he is a covenant-keeping God. And God's purposes are fulfilled, but in his way and in his own time. So in between, while you're waiting to get to the promised land, let's learn this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your path. So if you're in a difficult situation today, don't forget this lesson. He will do it.